భాష మాతృభాష కొరకు ఏమేం చేయాలి, ఏ రకంగా చేయాలి ప్రశ్నలు వేసి ఆ రకంగా పార్లమెంట్ ద్వారా అమలు చేయించినటువంటి వ్యక్తి నారాయణ రెడ్డి గారు. అదే రకంగా మన జెండా నేషనల్ ఫ్లాగ్ చేసినటువంటి పింగళి వెంకయ్య గారు ఉన్నారు. ఆ పింగళి వెంకయ్య గారి యొక్క ఇల్లు ఊరి గుడిసెలాగా ఉన్నది. దాన్ని ఎవరు పట్టించుకున్నటువంటి వాళ్ళు లేకుంది. కానీ నారాయణ రెడ్డి గారు ఆ పింగళి వెంకయ్య గారి గురించి ప్రశ్న వేసి ఇది ఈ రకంగా ఉంది, పశువుల కొట్టాల్లాగా ఉంది, అదా మనం ఇచ్చేటువంటి గౌరవం అని చెప్పి దాని మీద మాట్లాడి అది ఈరోజు ఒక హిస్టారికల్ ప్లేస్ కింద చేసినటువంటి వారు మన నారాయణ రెడ్డి గారు. అదే రకంగా మనం పంచతంత్ర కథలు చూసాం. అవన్నీ కూడా మనందరికీ తెలుసు. రాచరిక వ్యవస్థలో గొడవలు అవుతాయనేటువంటి ఇంట్లో ఎవరి పేర్లు తీసుకోకుండా పక్షుల్ని వీటిని పెట్టి కథలు రాశారు. అదే రకంగా నారాయణ రెడ్డి గారు కూడా వారు రాసినటువంటి ఆత్మబంధు సినిమాలో అనగనగా ఒక రాజు అనగనగా ఒక రాని చెప్పి పూర్ పీపుల్ దానికి చదువు రాకుండా పర్వాలేదు, కానీ వానికి కూడా జ్ఞానం ఉంటుంది. కాబట్టి జ్ఞానంతో సంసారం నడుస్తుంది తప్ప పిహెచ్డీలతో కాదు అనేటువంటి పద్ధతిలో వారు ఆ యొక్క దీన్ని వారు రాయటం జరిగింది. తర్వాత వారు స్వయంగా చెప్పేవారు, నా పేరు కవి, ఇంటి పేరు చైతన్యం, ఊరు సహజీవనం, తీరు సమభావం, కవిత్వం నా మాతృభాష, ఇతివృత్తం బాణవత్వం అనేటువంటిది వారు రాయటమే కాకుండా వారు చెప్పటమే కాకుండా వారి యొక్క ఆచరణలో కూడా ఆ రకంగా ఆచరించారనేటువంటిది నా విశ్వాసం. కాబట్టి ఈరోజు వారిని మనం ఈ యొక్క ఫంక్షన్ ద్వారా స్మరించుకుంటున్నటువంటి సందర్భంలో రాబోయేటువంటి తరాలకి ప్రేరణ ఇవ్వాలని చెప్పి వారు మన దగ్గర భౌతికంగా మన దగ్గర లేకపోయినా వారి కవిత్వం, వారి యొక్క విశ్వంబర ఈ యొక్క ఎప్పటికీ జీవించి ఉండాలని ఆ యొక్క కవికి నా యొక్క వందనాలు. ఆ మట్టి విశ్వంబర, ఆ విశ్వంబరే మానవుడు సినారే రచనలకు సబ్జెక్ట్ కింద చేర్చినట్లయితే వారి యొక్క గ్రంథాలపై చర్చ జరిగితే ఆ రచనలకు పరమార్థం లభిస్తుందని చెప్పి దాని మీదనే అనేక మంది ఈరోజు రీసెర్చ్ చేయడానికి అవకాశం ఉంటుందని చెప్పి ఈ సందర్భంగా మనం చేసుకుంటూ తెలుగు గురించి ఇంత మాట్లాడుతున్నటువంటి నేను కూడా త్రిపురలో వెళ్ళిన తర్వాత త్రిపురలో తెలుగు సంఘం అక్కడ ఉంది. తెలుగు వారందరికీ సంక్రాంతి కార్యక్రమాలు నా యొక్క లోక్ భవన్లోనే పిలిచి సంక్రాంతి సంబరాలు చేస్తుంటాం. ఉగాది ఫెస్టివల్ ఇవన్నీ కూడా అక్కడ ఉన్నాయి. అంతేకాకుండా లోకల్ భాష మనం ఎక్కడైతే పనిచేస్తున్నామో అక్కడి భాషను నేర్చుకొని వాళ్ళతో కూడా మమేకం కావాలనేటువంటి ఆలోచనతో బంగ్లా చదవటం నేర్చుకొని అక్కడ ఉన్నటువంటి 26th డే పరేడ్, అదే రకంగా అసెంబ్లీలో కూడా బంగ్లాలో మాట్లాడటం జరిగింది. అదే కాకుండా తెలుగు పిల్లలు ఎక్కడున్నారు, ఉద్యోగస్తులు ఉన్నారు తెలుగు వాళ్ళు, వాళ్ళ కొరకు తెలుగు బంగ్లా భాష ఇంగ్లీషు అంటే బంగ్లా భాష ఎట్లా ఉచ్చరించాలి, దాని అర్థం ఏంటిది అనేటువంటిది తెలుగు బంగ్లా భాషను తెలుగులో నేర్చుకోవటం కొరకు 2 పుస్తకాలు కూడా అలా ప్రింట్ చేయించడం జరిగింది. కాబట్టి ఈ యొక్క డిజిటల్ యుగంలో ప్రాచీన తెలుగు భాష, ఆధునిక భాష, సంస్కృతులు పరిరక్షణ, వీటిని కొత్తదనంతో కొత్త మార్గాలు అన్వేషించాలని, మన ఇంట్లో ఖచ్చితంగా తెలుగులో మాట్లాడాలి, మన పూర్వీకులు గ్రామీణ ప్రాంత అంశాలపై అవగాహన ఉండాలి. ఎందుకంటే ఈరోజు గ్రామాల్లో మోట అంటే తెలియదు, మోకంటే తెలియదు, బావి అంటే తెలియదు, చేడబావి అంటే తెలియదు. ఇక్కడ ముందు కూర్చున్నటువంటి వాళ్ళు పెద్దవాళ్ళు ఎవరైతే ఉన్నారో ఆడవాళ్ళు నాకు ఆ మధ్య ఒకరు చెప్పారు, మేము ఊర్లో ఇట్లా మామిడి చెట్టు మీద కోతి కొమ్మ ఆడుకునే వాళ్ళమని చెప్పి అంటే అమెరికాకి వెళ్ళి వచ్చినటువంటి ఆమె బిడ్డ డోంట్ టెల్ స్టోరీస్ మమ్మీ అని అన్నారు. అంటే మనం మామిడి చెట్ల మీద ఎక్కి దొరికేటువంటిది ఆట ఆడుకుంటామనంటే వాళ్ళ నమ్మకం లేదు. ఆ రకమైనటువంటి పరిస్థితి ఈరోజు ఉంది. కాబట్టి మనం ఈ తెలుగు కథలు చెప్పేటప్పుడు పద్యాలు కానీ పదాలు కానీ ఆ వర్డ్స్ వీటినన్నిటిని కూడా పదే పదే రిపీట్ చేయటం కొరకు, లేదా మనకి ఏమీ లేనప్పుడు కనీసం తెలుగు సీరియల్స్, తెలుగు సినిమాలో అప్పుడప్పుడు మనం పెట్టి వాళ్ళకి అర్థమయ్యేటట్టుగా చేయాలని చెప్పి, ఎన్ని భాషలు తెలిసినా మాతృభాషకి ప్రయారిటీ ఇవ్వాలని చెప్పి నేను సందర్భంగా మనవి చేసుకుంటూ, ఈ యొక్క ఈరోజు సన్మాన గ్రహీత సచ్చిదానందన్ గారికి ప్రత్యేకంగా అభినందనలు తెలియజేస్తూ, ఈ కార్యక్రమం నిర్వహించడం అంత సులభమైనటువంటిది కాదు. కానీ నారాయణ రెడ్డి గారి కూతురు గంగ గారు ఒక పట్టుదలతోటి దీన్ని నిర్వహిస్తూ ముందుకు తీసుకెళ్తున్నారు. వారికి భగవంతుడు ఆయుష్ ఆరోగ్యం ఇచ్చి ఈ యొక్క కార్యక్రమాన్ని ఇదే రకంగా ముందుకు తీసుకెళ్తూ పేరు సొసైటీ కావచ్చు, లేదా నారాయణ రెడ్డి గారికి కావచ్చు, కానీ తెలుగుకి, తెలుగు తల్లికి వారు చేస్తున్నటువంటి సేవ అని చెప్పి నేను ఈ సందర్భంగా మనవి చేసుకుంటూ, మరొకసారి వారికి అన్ని రకాలుగా భగవంతుడు ఆయుష్ ఆరోగ్యం ఇచ్చి ఈ కార్యక్రమాన్ని కొనసాగించాలని చెప్పి కోరుతూ సెలవు తీసుకుంటున్నాను. జై హింద్, జై భారత్.
ధన్యవాదాలు సార్. ముఖ్య అతిథి గారు నారాయణ రెడ్డి గారి గురించి చెబుతూ ఉర్దూనే విద్యార్థిగా ఊపిరిగా మలుచుకొని తనలో తెలుగును నిలిపిన హరికథలకు నారాయణ రెడ్డి గారు ఎప్పుడూ జ్ఞాపకం చేసుకుంటుండేవారు. ఆ నారాయణ రెడ్డి గారి తెలుగును నిలిపిన మామిడిపల్లి సాంబకవి ఒక మాట అంటారు నారాయణ రెడ్డి గారి గురించి. అదియే ఆతని నిర్మలోజ్వల వసంతారామ సౌందర్యం, అదియే ఆతని నిర్మలోజ్వల వసంతారామ సౌందర్యం, అయ్యదియే ఆతని హృద్వియత్తల సముద్యన్మేచకానంద నీరద గజారవం, అది రెడ్డి కుల పారావార చంద్రస్ఫురత్వదనోద్భాసిత వముఖంబు జన సంభావ్యము తర్కింపగన్ అంటారు మామిడిపల్లి సాంబకవి. కాబట్టి నారాయణ రెడ్డి ఇవాళ తను ఈ వేదిక మీద, ఈ సదస్సులో, ఈ రవీంద్ర భారతిలో మనతో ఉన్నారు కాబట్టి ఇంతమందిని ఇవాళ ఇక్కడ హాజరైన. ఇట్స్ టైమ్ ఫర్ యాక్సెప్టెన్స్ స్పీచ్. ఐ వుడ్ లైక్ టు రిక్వెస్ట్ టుడేస్ విశ్వంబర్ అవార్డీ ప్రొఫెసర్ కె సచ్చిదానందన్ గారు ఫర్ హిస్ యాక్సెప్టెన్స్ స్పీచ్. సార్ ప్లీజ్.
Chief guest and the Honorable Governor of Tripura, Sri Nallu Indrasena Reddy, President Sri Dudila Sridhar Babu, guest of honor Dr. Nalimela Bhaskar, and the real master of the ceremony, Dr. Paripaga Mohan. Those who beautifully performed one of Narayana Reddy's poems in dance form, Neha and Chetana, and those who gathered music, Pendyala Nagesh Rao and Kalaga Krishna Mohan. All those who are present on the stage, and my dear friends and lovers of poetry who respect Sri Narayana Reddy sitting in front of me. It has been a very happy day for me, not just because I was awarded with the Vishwambhara Dr. Sri Narayana Reddy National Literary Award, but also because it was an occasion for me to meet a lot of old friends. I can see quite a lot of them in the audience, writers, translators, all the colleagues in the Sahitya Academy in Delhi, and also to remember my maybe strange relationship with the Telugu language, which has always fallen like music on my ears. My first remembrance perhaps goes back to my early childhood, when my brother-in-law, who was himself a novelist, used to listen to P. Bhanumati's rendering of Telugu songs on the All India Radio. That was when I began to admire beyond measure the inherent and natural beauty and music of Telugu language. Whenever I hear it, whether it is a speech or the reading of a poem or the reading of a story, I always admire Telugu for its music. It is said in the West, Italian is the most musical of languages, and if there is an Italian in India, it can only be Telugu, because it has that unusual music in every word, every utterance, every reading, every sound that it makes, every letter. So, of course, the admiration for Telugu grew over the years as I began to read a lot of Telugu poetry in translation. I began to cultivate friendships with a lot of Telugu people in the academy and outside the academy through on the many academy platforms, many meetings of which were held in Hyderabad itself. And then through my PA, who also spoke Telugu and was from Andhra Pradesh, who later became the secretary of the Sahitya Academy. So many people, and I have been, and I am glad to say now that I have been to Sri Narayana Reddy's earlier house, because I went to the new house yesterday, to an earlier house long ago, when I was heading the Sahitya Academy in Delhi. So it is the story of a very long and profound relationship, a relationship of intense and intimate love that I have had and I still have with Telugu language and with the people who speak Telugu, whether of Telangana or whether of Andhra. It makes no difference to me, because poets do not believe very much in borders. Poets always try to travel beyond the borders. They like birds. Birds do not care whether it is the Pakistan border or the China border or the Afghan border or it is flying to Germany or France. They don't bother. They just fly if the whole sky is there above them. And this is also the state of a poet. For him or her, the whole world ultimately is one. And it is not even a homocentric world, not a world ruled by men who are supposed to conquer everything around them, but it's a world where men, animals, trees, even blades of grass coexist. They existed together without boundaries. It is in that kind of ultimate and intimate love that all poets have believed, and I think still believe. I have a very short written acceptance speech which I will read now if you allow me. This is a humbling moment for me as a poet, especially as I remember the great predecessors who had been chosen to lend dignity to this unique honor in the name of the veteran Telugu poet and lyric writer Sri C. Narayana Reddy. I cannot tell from where poetry came to me. I had hardly any poet predecessors. Whenever I try to think about it, I hear the diverse strains of the incessant rains of my village in Kerala, about which you beautifully spoke. He read some lines from my poem on the rain, the various sounds that the rain makes, the various languages that the rain speaks. So perhaps I got my poetry from those infinite strains of the beautiful rain that falls on different surfaces and creates different tones and melodies and ragas. And also from the reading in my early days of Ramayana, whose luminous lines always illuminated my mind and filled my mind with a lot of love for poetry. Of course, in my house also, like in most houses, there was this practice of reading Ramayana every night. After dinner, we would read Ramayana. So generally, my mother or my sister would read it. But on certain days when they are not supposed to read Ramayana, I would be asked to read. That was when I also began to understand the poetry in Malayalam, the music in Malayalam, and the way words can be combined and broken and recombined, and poetry can be written in so many ways. Anybody who has, there is anybody here who has happened to read, I am sure there are some Adhyatma Ramayana by Eluthachen, Tuljat Eluthachen, who is supposed to be the father of the language. You know how he uses different kinds of meters for different kandas in the Ramayana. Aranya Kanda is written in 1 meter, Sundara Kanda is written in another, Yuddha Kanda is written in another. All meters which go very much with the mood of that particular chapter or that particular kanda of Ramayana. That was again one of my early experiences of poetry. My mother taught me to talk to cats and crows and trees. It's actually true. Because my mother really used to speak to dogs and cats and all the little animals around, and all the cows in the cow shed had names. I remember their names even, Gomati, Kaumudi, all those. I remember those cows, and I remember with great pain how they used to cry, when they could yield no more milk. They would be sold to some person, and they would look back again and again at my house and go crying. Because that literally broke my mind as a little child, seeing this cow looking back at our house and crying. So and I have seen my mother, of course, talking to the mango tree, talking to the coconut tree, asking them why they are not yielding mangoes as before. What happened to you? Don't you get enough water? Don't you get enough manure? So this, I am not exaggerating at all. My mother really used to speak to animals and trees, and that was also one of the sources of my poetry. I still speak to cats. I have begun to understand, I have a whole poem called The Language of Cats. So I have begun to understand the meaning of a cat, turning its tail in a particular fashion, sitting in a particular fashion, then rubbing against your body, showing how it trusts you and it loves you, and the various ways in which it mews. Every mew has a particular meaning. You can create a cat's dictionary if you want, because they have different kinds of cries and different kinds of gestures, all of which have very different kinds of meaning. So we often believe that only men have languages. Sorry, no. Trees have languages. Cats and dogs and all the animals have their own languages, and they communicate to one another. You must have listened to birds. I'm sorry, I'm not using the text at all. So you must have listened to birds talking to each other. One bird crying in a particular fashion, some other bird from some other tree answering that bird, or it could be a cry of love, or it could be an invitation saying that there is food there and let us go together. So it could mean so many things. All these languages, not only men's languages, have taught me what exactly poetry is and what poetry should do, how poetry should be used not to express hatred, not to increase the enmity between human beings, but to express love, fondness, what the Buddha would call Maitri, that sisterhood or brotherhood of all things on earth. Maitri, Karuna, Upeksha. I'm sure you know these words, those great slogans of the Buddha. Karuna, kindness, absolute empathy, kindness, or Upeksha, the readiness to sacrifice things, even your life, for a noble cause. Maybe to save the country, maybe to save the mankind. This kind of a readiness to sacrifice, readiness to embrace everything around you, readiness to empathize or sympathize with all things around you. So these again are some of the sources that continue to inspire poets. So my mother taught me, I read again, to talk to cats and crows and trees. From my pious father, I learned to communicate with gods and spirits. Mother used to speak to animals and birds, while my father would speak to different kinds of gods and to various kinds of spirits. My insane grandmother, she was actually supposed to be insane, but now I am not sure what is sane and what is insane. When I was young, it was very clear. They used to say, that man is mad, or he is insane, or she is insane. Now I do not know who is sane and who is insane in a country, even in our own country. And so but my grandmother, once in a while she had these fits of insanity. She would begin to travel. She would go to different houses, and she would go even cross the river and go to another country. And so from that, my insane grandmother, I learned to create a parallel world in order to escape the wild ordinariness of the tiringly humdrum everyday world. There is a kind of insanity, if you can call it insanity at all, in literature, in poetry particularly, because what do insane people do? They actually are living in another world. They are speaking to people whom we do not see around them, and they seem to have a language of their own, and they seem to create another imagined parallel world. poets do. Of course, Shakespeare said that long ago, how poets and mad people are alike. They create these parallel worlds of imagination. And then they also taught me to be there for everyone, to live in another world that oneself has created. And the dead taught me to be one with the soil. The dead people who go back to the soil told me, you came from the soil and you will go back to the soil. Embrace the soil. Be with it. My father was a peasant and I remember it with great pride. And I still believe that we came from the soil like plants do, like grass does, like all trees do. We also come from the soil and we ultimately go back to it. So there is a kind of eternal bond between man and earth, between man and soil. The wind taught me to move and shake without ever being seen. And the rain trained my voice in 1,000 modulations. The rain gave me my ragas, my different kinds of melodies. And the wind told me, you can shake the world, just not being seen. You cannot see the wind, but you can see the branches shaking. So you can work like that silently to change the hearts of the people. And that is what exactly poets and perhaps all writers do and should do. With such teachers, perhaps it was impossible for me not to be a poet of sorts. So these were my teachers, my dead mother, my dead father, my mother who spoke to animals and trees, the various kinds of animals and trees I found around me, who I began to love. The dead who taught me to embrace the soil, and the rain teaching me music, like a band master teaching me music, various kinds of melody. So it was living in that village where I was born and brought up. It was difficult not to be a poet. It was not difficult to be a poet. It was difficult not to be one, because you were surrounded by poetry. You were surrounded by people who had created all these so many imagined worlds beyond the earth. This facility of imagination, this unusual ability to create other worlds, not this world sometimes, because this world is full of inequality, hatred, quarrels in the name of religion, in the name of caste, and all that. Because I personally do not believe in any of these. I'm happy or sorry to say. Because those who create quarrels in the name of religion, I want to warn every one of you to be careful about them. If somebody says this is the greatest religion on earth, I'm sorry, I don't believe so. Because you look at my shelf, you will find the Holy Bible, you will find the Holy Quran, you will find the Bhagavad Gita. I read the Upanishads when I was 21, 22 years old. All the Upanishads, I can quote from the Upanishads very easily, even now, including its description of the Brahma. Navapratakshim gacchati, navagacchati, na mana, na vitmo, na vijnanimo, yathaiva vanishishya. That is, you cannot see it, you cannot hear it, you cannot teach it or learn it as it is, and that so Brahma is supposed to be infinity, the infinity around us. Because Earth is only a small corner of this big universe. And the real poet is aware of this endlessness of the universe. The fact that Earth is very small, just a speck of dust in a system of big galaxies. So, I'm not going to read the whole thing, it looks like, because for every sentence I'm interpreting it, I'm interpreting every sentence in any sentence, so I won't do that. I'll just maybe skip many passages, maybe later it can be circulated and all that. So our village was beautiful, and I was unaware of its charms as long as I lived there. It had paddy fields that would fill with water during floods and with blue flowers after harvest in autumn. Hills with named and nameless creepers and flowers, backwaters on which little open boats piled with men and merchandise, little peaceful and then little peaceful temples, mosques and churches which bred genuine gods and not devils as they sometimes seem to do now. The Goya figures of Hindu gods and goddesses, the family worship, seemed to go well with those post-Gandhi times. That was also my second lesson in surrealism. The first having been the 3-month-long typhoid fever that had almost killed me when I was 4 years old, and given me Dali-like, Salvador Dali, I think the great surrealist painter, Dali-like nightmares that crowd my early poetry. In my early poetry, you find those very surreal, unreal kinds of images and dreams. They perhaps come from that strange fever I had when I lost consciousness and my mind began to wander all over. So I have many to thank here for whatever little I have achieved, I put it in quotation, as a poet, my family, especially my life partner, without whose constant support I would not have been able to pursue my profession and my art at the same time. Some of the teachers in my school and colleges who encouraged me to read and write and confidently sent me to poetry competitions. Encouraged and my classmates, often from economically poor backgrounds, who gave me a sense of the world of suffering even worse than mine. The editors of little magazines who dared publish something offbeat, often jeered at by conservative critics before modern poetry got mainstream in the language, and popular magazines began to request poets like me to contribute. Senior poets, I'm not going into their names, like Ayyappa Panikkar and others, who persuaded me to take poetry, criticism and translation of poetry seriously. That resulted over the years in more than 30 collections of my poetry. Here, of course, there are more, yes, there are more, but many of them are selections and collected poems and all that. And several studies of poetry, and around 3,000 pages of world poetry in translation, which have come out in 3 volumes, most of it. Fellow poets, artists, I am thanking these people, fellow poets, artists, filmmakers and playwrights who were my companions in a common search for a new sensibility and idiom, and who also made me write on arts other than poetry. I have written a lot of articles on painting and other arts, watch the best of world cinema and theatre, and visit the finest of art galleries in 6 continents across the world. That was again a great experience, traveling in 6 continents and reading your poetry and enjoying the poetry of others in around maybe 45 countries or so. That has also enriched my my experience as a human being. Now a collection of my travel poems has come out. It is titled in Malayalam, Etra Cheriya Di Bhumi, how small this earth is. That is what you feel. When you travel around it, it's like a village, our earth, and you begin to realize, well, it is not as big as we had imagined. You can easily cross the border and go elsewhere. You will hear somebody else speaking some language. You may understand, you may not understand, but then you get so many, the music of so many different languages, and all those teach you lessons which you cannot get anywhere else. And also, many of my the masters of Indian writing and world writing, whom I read in translation, either in English or in Malayalam or in Hindi. These are the 3 languages I know somewhat well. There are some other languages which I understand, maybe a bit of Telugu, maybe a bit of Kannada, and a bit of Bengali, etc. But then I mainly understand, and I can very well speak in these 3 languages. And then, of course, the impact all these translations had on my aesthetic imagination and my ethical imagination, and especially the books, especially 4 books that have left a lasting impact on my imagination. The Mahabharata, Holy Bible, Dhammapada, and my experiments with the truth. These are 4. I'm not saying there are no other books, but these are 4 books that have impacted me very deeply. I have read Mahabharata not as a book of war, but as a book against war. Because in the end, you see the Pandavas wandering around and seeing the dead bodies of so many young people, dead horses, dead elephants, dead trees. And then finally, there is Vyasa's cry, raising his hand. Where has Dharma gone? Looking for Dharma. So there is a kind of despair. I have read it as a tragedy and a lesson to all human beings not to go to wars at all and never support any kind of war. So that morality, that lesson I learned from the Mahabharata. I learned the lesson of charity from the Holy Bible. I learned the lesson of the great Buddhist lessons from Dhammapada. And I learned the lesson of absolute honesty and non-violence from Gandhi's life story, my experiments with the truth. And my companions, especially writers in the turbulent 70s, who lent my poetry a sense of history, cultural missionaries, who, by making me part of the programs of Bharat Bhavan in Bhopal in my formative years, helped me have first-hand acquaintance with some of the finest poets in India and abroad, from Arun Palatkar and Kedarnath Singh to Octavio Paz and Thomas Transformer, with whom I have read and I have interacted. And my 14 years in the Sahitya Academy, Delhi, that first provided me with great opportunity to travel inside and outside India to meet the best of writers, my unknown readers who recommended me to many literary festivals and book fairs that helped broaden my vision of life and literature and made me write several travelogues, poets, editors and publishers in 20 languages who got my poems translated and published, so that I now have more than 35 collections of my poetry in translation, as I said here, including in Hindi, Bengali, Marathi, Oriya, Telugu, Punjabi, Tamil, Arabic, Irish, French, Italian, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese and German. These are some of the languages in which I have collections of poetry that found me readers across the continents and won me several invitations and honors, not to forget my first readers who keep reading and commenting on my poetry in the original, and partners of the many short-lived avant-garde magazines for poetry, art and thought that I happen to edit at different periods of my life. Those who guided my research in post-structural criticism, that why not helping my poetry did help me better grasp the complex semantic and semiotic and psycholinguistic processes that go into the reading and writing of poetry. And all the readers and judges who found my poetry worthy of various kinds of recognition like this at different levels from diverse countries, including the present honor, and inspired me to write children's poetry, plays, short stories and ghazals, in addition to poetry and criticism and philosophical and theoretical writing that I had begun very early in life. So there is no time to read the whole speech. So I just conclude with where I stand regarding poetry. I have begun to understand poetry. I'll just take 2 minutes. I understand poetry not in binaries, because I believe that our teachers, of course, have done a lot of good for students. But the way poetry, I am not very happy with the way poetry is often taught. It is always taught in binaries. Tradition there, modernity here. Then content there and the feel, or the thought there and the feeling here. So we always try to look at poetry in binaries. But poetry does not work in binaries. When you have something to say, form comes naturally from that. Not that you have something and then you graft a form somewhere and put it in that form. It is not done like a machine or an automaton. And that's why even if finally I write poetry, it is not, I hope, going to be like human poetry. Because we bring together contradictions. Tradition, modernity, no contradiction. There is continuity. I learned a lot from all my predecessors. As it was said here, perhaps during the COVID days, I was translating Kabir and Tukaram and the Shaivite poets of Kannada and Sufi poets like Bulleh Shah and Shah Abdul Latif, and of course many poets including Meera. And I have also a series of poems on all of them. I have a poem on Meera. Here when I saw the poem on Meera, I remember that it is sung widely and danced widely in Kerala. And so there is no contradiction between tradition and contemporaneous. On the other hand, there is a continuity. It was there, and we learn a lot from what has been written, so that we may write something which has never been written. So this reading, this learning, this combination, this synthesis of tradition and modernity, this synthesis of individual and society, because that is also often separated even by the so-called progressives. They say you should write for the society. No, even when I am writing about my pains, I am writing about your pains also. I naturally share it. It comes from within me, and so you also, obviously it represents you, your conflicts too. When I write about my love, I am writing about a feeling of love that all human beings have. And this is true when I write about nature or whatever be the theme. I am writing, ultimately poetry is a kind of combined form of relationship. It is, I often tell my children, I mean not only my children, so many children come to my home just to listen to me and ask me questions and all that. Almost every day this is happening these days. As one of the disappearing poets, they want to see me and they want to talk to me. So I tell them poetry has 4 conversations. One is a conversation with myself. One is a conversation with other people. The third is a conversation with nature. And the fourth is a conversation with cosmos, the whole universe. And in poetry, all these 4 levels of dialogue, levels of conversation get combined. That is how it becomes an integrated art, an art where everything is synthesized and not separated. So, and that is also why poetry always has been and will remain the language not of hatred and war, but of love, unity, of equality, of the dreams that the best of human beings have. I want my poetry and all poetry to be filled with those beautiful dreams about another world where men can live in absolute amity without any kind of hatred or any kind of ego or any form of violence. So let me thank the members of the jury who chose me for the award. And I am not going into the reading of poetry now. My time is far over, because sometimes because I was a lecturer for 24 years. Imagine. So for us, 1 hour is the minimum. 3 is minimum. And so I will go on talking. So I consciously stopped it here. And whatever I wanted to say, essentially, I hope I have already conveyed to you. Thank you so much for your attendance and for your keenly listening. Thank you.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్. వీరి ప్రసంగం మన చేతిలో ఉంది. ఈనాటి కార్యక్రమంలో ముఖ్య అతిథి మాన్యులు త్రిపుర గవర్నర్ గారిని మా చిరు సత్కారాన్ని స్వీకరించాల్సిందిగా కోరుతున్నాం. చైతన్య లయచరణ్ రెడ్డి ముఖ్య అతిథిగానే సత్కరిస్తారు. విశిష్ట అతిథి డాక్టర్ నలివేల భాస్కర్ గారు సత్కరించాల్సిందిగా సినారి కుటుంబ సభ్యులకు భాస్కర్ గారు నలివేల భాస్కర్ సార్. తర్వాత ఇప్పటిదాకా మొదటగా నృత్య ప్రదర్శన చేసిన నేహా సత్తెనపల్లి, చేతన బుద్ధిరాజు జ్ఞాపక స్వీకరించాల్సిందిగా కోరుతున్నాం. మాన్యులు ముఖ్య అతిథిగా చేతులుగా జ్ఞాపకం స్వీకరిస్తాం. అదేవిధంగా ఈ గత సంవత్సరాలుగా ఈ కార్యక్రమాన్ని నిర్వహిస్తున్న వి సతీష్ బాబు గారు, సతీష్ బాబు మనస్సుని ఓట్ ఆఫ్ థ్యాంక్స్తో కార్యక్రమం ఉంది. ఆ తర్వాత జాతీయ గీత ఆలాపన ఉంటుంది. వి సతీష్ బాబు. శ్రీమతి మనస్సు.
సభకు విచ్చేసిన అతిథులకు, పెద్దలకు, సాహిత్య అభిమానులకు అందరికీ నా హృదయపూర్వక నమస్కారాలు. ఈరోజు ఈ సభలో వివిధ భాషలు మాట్లాడేవారు ఉన్నందుకు అందరికీ సౌకర్యంగా ఉండేలా నేను తెలుగు మరియు ఆంగ్ల భాషల్లో మాట్లాడతాను. On behalf of Srimati Sushila Narayan Reddy Trust and our family, it is my privilege to offer the vote of thanks this evening. As Dr. C. Narayan Reddy Garu's granddaughter, this occasion is always very close to my heart. Growing up, I saw that literature was just never Tatagari profession. It was his way of connecting with people. To see so many distinguished writers, artists, scholars, and lovers of literature come together every year to celebrate his life and legacy is something our entire family cherishes deeply. మొదటగా మన ముఖ్య అతిథి త్రిపుర రాష్ట్ర గవర్నర్ శ్రీ నల్లు ఇంద్రసేన రెడ్డి గారికి మా హృదయపూర్వక కృతజ్ఞతలు తెలియజేస్తూ ప్రారంభించాలనుకుంటున్నాను. ఈ వేడుకకు విచ్చేసి విశ్వంబర డాక్టర్ సి నారాయణ రెడ్డి జాతీయ సాహిత్య పురస్కారాన్ని ప్రదానం చేయడంతో పాటు డాక్టర్ సి నారాయణ రెడ్డి గారి నాటకం సీతా అపహరణను ఆవిష్కరించినందుకు మా ప్రగాఢ కృతజ్ఞత. మీ రాకతో ఈ వేడుక మరింత ప్రత్యేకంగా మారింది. థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్. We are truly grateful to Dr. Nalimela Bhaskar Garu, Distinguished Scholar and Sahitya Akademi Awardee, for enriching this gathering with your thoughtful presence and inspiring words. The rendering of Sachinanda Garu poetry and your words delighted us all. A very special word of gratitude and congratulations to this year's recipient of the Vishwambara Dr. C. Narayan Reddy National Literary Award, Sri K. Sachidanandan Garu. Your extraordinary contribution to Malayalam literature and to Indian literature as a whole has inspired generations of readers and writers. It is a matter of great pride for our trust and family to honor an eminent literary personality of your stature. And you visiting us yesterday at our home, spending quality time, really made us all happy. And today your words were a true delight to hear you speak. Our heartfelt appreciation to Dr. Patipaka Mohan Garu, who conducted his proceedings with such grace, warmth and elegance. And this evening was made even more memorable by the beautiful presentation of Meera Padavali. Our sincere thanks to Neha Sattanapalli and Chetana Budhiraju for captivating performance, and to Sri Tandyala Nageshwar Rao Garu and Sri Kalaga Krishna Mohan Garu for their wonderful musical accompaniment. Together, you brought Dr. C. Narayan Reddy Garu's words alive in a truly moving way. తెర వెనుక ఎంతో శ్రమించి పనిచేసిన మా నిర్వాహక కమిటీ సభ్యులకు, స్వచ్ఛంద సేవకులకు, సాంకేతిక బృందానికి, మీడియా మిత్రులకు, సహకరించిన ప్రతి ఒక్కరికి నా హృదయపూర్వక ధన్యవాదాలు తెలియజేస్తున్నాను. చివరిగా ఈరోజు మా కార్యక్రమానికి విచ్చేసి ప్రతి ఒక్కరికి మా హృదయపూర్వక ధన్యవాదాలు. మీ అందరి సాన్నిధ్యమే డాక్టర్ సి నారాయణ రెడ్డి గారి వారసత్వాన్ని అందించే గొప్ప నివాళి. థ్యాంక్ యూ. ధన్యవాదాలు.
అందరం నేర్చుని జాతీయ గీతాల పనిలో పండుగ.
I क्रान्तिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मा